Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their diverse stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. On today's episode of Autism Stories, Shannan Palma returns to discuss an app that her organization created to help neurodivergent folks make better decisions in our lives. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Shannan, thanks so much for returning to Autism Stories.
Thank you, Doug. It's so great to be back.
I love good collaboration, and especially when it's from those that I've interviewed on Autism Stories when they collaborate with one another. In thinking about that, since you were last here on Autism Stories, you've partnered with one of our former guests. Can you tell us a little bit about that collaboration?
Yeah, it's funny because we're meeting later today. I had briefly connected when Nigel Rising was doing the whole Autisticapalooza thing, and unfortunately that did fall through. But that event for autistic women, I had connected with several really cool people through that, and in one of the conversations, we had started talking about suicidal ideation, and we had started talking about, and it was actually Amber Michael who proposed the idea. She was like, yeah, there's this idea about non-existence ideation, and that resonates with me more than suicidal ideation. And we all started talking about it. And basically the idea being that as autistic adults, what we were resonating with was just the desire for a break. And that if the only way out was to not be, like the only way to not have sensory and cognitive overload all the time, right? Like if there was no other way to regulate other than non-existence, then that you could get desperate enough where you didn't want to die, but you wanted to stop existing for a while. You wanted a break. So we started talking about that, and it resonated with everyone that we were talking to. So then fast forward, and that group kind of, or that undertake, like it didn't go like a lot of our stuff does. Like sometimes we just burn out in the middle of something, and it's a wonderful idea, but it is what it is. That's who we are. And I can't remember if I told you I was really interested in suicide prevention. I think I did. I was getting really interested in this idea because I really wanted to follow it. I didn't know anybody in the field, and it's not something I've done before. So like I contacted the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and got a meeting because suicide is really a big issue for autistic adults. I got a meeting and they were like, yeah, somebody should do this work. And I was like, okay, I will find those people. And you introduced me to Lisa Morgan, which thank you so much for that. It has been so wonderful for both of us. And it was really, and you were saying that you were kind of interested in, if I remember correctly, like how you could make this platform be even like more impactful. And kind of using all of the relationships and connections that you've built to try and just amplify. And I think that's what this did, because Lisa was really interested in the non-existence ideation, and she said yes, she would work with me on the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention application to do this research study, and that was awesome. And then she invited me to attend this working group, and it was we just renamed it, but it was like the Autism and Suicide Prevention Working Group, and it's probably going to be suicidality and autism focused engagement, so like safe, because that's something you can make a brand around and like get your resources out. But this amazing group of researchers who'd been working on this and it was headed by Lisa, who is autistic. And so just having that research she's the person. Like there's all these people who have published peer-reviewed research and getting these big grants for autism and suicide prevention, all of it came from Lisa. Like her activism, her realizing, hey, nobody is studying whether suicide prevention looks different when you're dealing with autistic people. And as an autistic person, I know it does. So she had helped found this group and had been sharing it for years. And she invited me to attend. And I was like, I have this idea. They were like, that's cool. Come back to the meeting. You can be one of us. And I thought that was cool. They were very nice. But what happened, and this is what I thought was really, really interesting, is that the more I talked to Lisa, the more I realized, like, she's the expert on all of this, first of all. And there are all these other people who could do the research. The problem was disseminating findings. Like they were creating all these really valuable resources, but they couldn't get any of the mainstream suicide prevention folks to put them on their website or like train their folks on them. As we were talking about that, I was looking at other grant opportunities, and PCORI is this patient-centered outcomes research institute. They've funded a lot of the research grants that Lisa's been a consultant on. Okay, so they've funded a lot of the this current research that's actually deeply embedded with lived experience. The dissemination is been like, again, within suicide, like it hasn't been what it could be. So Lisa and I decided to apply with the working group their support for this stakeholder convening grant. And we actually have been able to get support from some of the biggest suicide prevention groups in the US for this. So we passed the letter of intent and we're submitting our full proposal Monday. And hopefully it goes through and we have this big conference next year in Columbus, Ohio. So that could be really, really impactful because what we're doing is trying to set up a network for disseminating resources through things like AFSP and through Vibrant Emotional Health and the 988 line and stuff like that. And our people are dying on the regular. So it would be really, really nice if some of the prevention resources that are out there could be more effective for people with brains like ours.
Last time you were on Autism Stories, we discussed an AI-powered decision-making app you were working on for the neurodivergent community. Since then, you've done some user research with, I believe, hundreds of autistic and ADHD adults and other stakeholders to learn how AI-powered supports could improve medical and behavioral health. What have you learned since we last talked?
We've learned a lot. We had this definition that we were workshopping where we had gone through and done a lot of research into different definitions of medical and behavioral health and tried to figure out like what that would look like for autistic people, because a lot of us have co-occurring conditions and chronic pain and we don't know what our body is trying to tell us. Like we don't get the message. I know I have an atypical pain response. So like I broke my foot once and then I drove myself to the urgent care because I was like, oh, it's purple. I should do something. Like for some reason there are tears streaming down my face. This is very strange. Like, but I didn't feel the pain in the way that I think from like watching TV, other people feel that, right? So even just in terms of like awareness of our bodies, everything's different for us. And it's not even the same among our community. So we came up with the definition that it would be knowing how your actions and behaviors affect your inner balance and your relationships with others in the world around you, and then making choices in your daily life that help create and maintain that balance. And then the thing that came up in every focus group we did was, oh, that's all really great, but I have to have the capacity to act on it. Like nothing. It's wonderful, but I actually already know all of that stuff. And it's just whether or not my brain will let me act on it that day. And so we had kind of put capacity in that inner balance, like that, the capacity to be present and react in your life. But we realized that is the core of medical and behavioral health for people with brains like ours, is that you have to, it's not just knowledge. I mean, it's great to have that knowledge. It's necessary. But if you don't have the capacity to act on it, you can't do anything. So basically, preventing dysregulation is the biggest lever that we can push to improve the medical and behavioral health. So anything we can do to just help people, give them a little bit more capacity, a little bit more room to act, take any kind of that cognitive or sensory load off, can be really helpful.
Now, based on the research you've done, you've created the decision-making app Decide that I've started to use, which uses AI and science-based processes to help you answer big and small questions in your daily life. So what exactly are these science-based processes?
We reviewed a lot of the research on decision making. April Gao, who's our chief product officer, she did quite a bit. She just went straight down the rabbit hole, and she came back and she's like, "There's this." My favorite kind of very succinct way of describing overall decision quality and what we ended up kind of going for is taken from Annie Duke. She was a champion poker player, world poker player, and a cognitive psychologist or something like that. But she talks about the fact that outcome quality, you've got to distinguish between decision quality and outcome quality. So people get really confused because they judge the quality of their decisions based on whether they lead to the outcome they want. But outcome quality is actually, it's a combination of things. It's your decision quality plus hidden information, because you don't know what you don't know. And then there's also luck. And no matter what, you're always going to have to, no matter how good your decision quality is, hidden information and luck can totally take you in a different direction. So yeah, I can plan everything about going to an event. This happened to me last year. I can plan everything about going to this event where I'm going to be a mentor, and it's not my most comfortable thing to be in a big group setting with strangers. So I have a route. I have where I'm going to park. I have comfortable clothes on. I know what I'm going to have for lunch. I have a good breakfast. I leave. And then it turns out that there's construction around the building. So I made all the right decisions to prep for this. I got enough sleep. I did all of that. But by the time I arrive, I'm just completely frazzled because I drove around the building for half an hour because I couldn't figure out how to get in. So we don't know what we don't know. So when we were designing Decide, the number one problem that most people asked for help with wasn't even something that needed AI. It was just I have these routines and something has disrupted one of my routines, and now I have to make an in-the-moment switch or decision. And now I'm paralyzed because I don't know what, they don't have my drink at Starbucks. I don't know what I want to have. Now I have to, I have to restart the whole flow. What drinks do they have now? Okay, which of those do I like? Okay, how do I actually feel now? Okay, that's a lot for trying. They want you to make a decision right then.
Yeah.
And so we came up with this random from list. And the random decisions are basically, you can create a custom list. All the drinks I like at Starbucks. And also rate them by energy level. Ella Taub from Purple Ella.
Yep.
They were really helpful. They were one of the people we interviewed, and they were so many people told us energy level. Sometimes I want this, sometimes I want that. It's going to be different based on how much energy it takes. We got so many responses that were what I want to pick from when I'm high energy is different from what I want to pick from when I'm low energy. So when you create those lists, you can tag them with which energy levels they're okay for. And then you can just random from that list if you're in line trying to pick something out. I use it a lot I'm a single foster parent and I have 2 businesses, and I very rarely can make quick on the spot decisions without panic. Like I mean, panic is the way that I do that. Is I completely panic drive my adrenaline up and blurt something out, and then like sit on the couch and shake the rest of the night. So this was happening about like DoorDash and dinner every night, because they keep wanting to know what's for dinner, and it can't be the same thing it was last night. And I'm like, I would just eat pasta. I didn't make these decisions before. Why do you want me to? So I put in all the restaurants we order from regularly, and I rank them by energy level that it takes me to like wrangle the order. Like pizza, very low energy. Like it's going to be the same pizzas. But like if it's Panera, they all want to do different sandwiches, different, like that's a high energy order. And then when it comes time for dinner, if I can't cook, which a lot of times the fact that I can't cook is a big flashing neon sign that like I'm also too dysregulated to be able to figure out what to do as alternative. We random from lists, and I'm like, okay, this is what the app says. This is what we're eating today. And they're like, okay, because it feels fair to them. Like I didn't pick based on any one person's preferences. It was stuff we've all agreed that we like.
Don't blame me, blame the app. Is that kind of there is?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one I use that for the most. And then the guided decisions is the one that uses AI more. And that it was a combination of, you need to, like, there are, usually if you have the topic of a decision, it's pretty predictable what kinds of things you should be considering in that decision. Like it's not rocket science. It's just that it's pulling all of that together in the moment in real time is really hard for us, and making the decisions about it. So but it's a good thing for an LLM to do. Like it's not asking an LLM to do something beyond predicting what word comes next or predicting associations. So it's, you put in your question, and then the LLM, the large language model, basically suggests a series of affirmative statements that you can agree or disagree with. And so it's like, should I take a nap? So these are the should questions. So again, this is that decision science, like should questions are questions where you need to evaluate criteria. The should question, should I take a nap? The app will generate statements to figure out your context. So it'll be like, I am tired. Agree or disagree? And that's another place where the user research was really important, because originally we were going to ask questions, and then everybody was like, no, don't ask me questions. I'm going to panic. Like, I'm not going to use that. I can agree. I can do yes, no, but I can't do anything that will make feel more open-ended. So you agree or disagree, and it changes the number of questions it asks you based on like how big, how impactful it thinks the decision is. Then it gives you a recommendation based on your answers, and it explains why. It says, you said this, this, and this. Therefore, this would be your best choice. And then it also gives a percent confidence. The percent confidence is primarily just to remind people about that hidden information and luck. We don't know what we don't know. You should never have 100% confidence that something is going to be the right choice. You should always, like the max you should have is 95%. And that's okay. Like that's the max you can actually have and be making a good decision, because you have to factor those other things in. So that then gives you the option of get instructions once it gives you, and you can like choose to answer more questions or say, yeah, I don't like this answer. All right. And we also have mechanisms for people to say, actually, I would have liked it to ask me this other thing, and over time we'll adapt based on. But you can get instructions, and when you choose get instructions, the AI generates, or the LLM, generates a list of step-by-step instructions. And how I use it, like usually I kind of know what I need to do, but I can't act on that knowledge. So like I double book myself a lot. I try not to, but I have like 8 calendars, and sometimes I do it at least once a week. But then when I can see that I did it in advance, and then I won't do anything about that. Like I'll know, I know what I should do. I should like choose one, arrange to reschedule the other, like communicate that to the people involved. But when I see it, all my brain does is like, oh God, you made a mistake. The world's going to end, or people are going to hate you, or, like it just glitches and I can't take any action. So what I have done is like, I'll say, which one should I cancel? Like the networking event or the one-on-one? And then it'll ask me some questions, and almost always say cancel the networking event because you don't like people. But then it'll like, I can choose get instructions, and it'll say open your calendar, delete the event. Send an email saying you won't go. And I feel like you either get it or you don't. But like for me, I need that. I need it to tell me open your calendar and delete the event, because otherwise I'm not going to do it. I mean, I know I should, but I can't get my brain to send that signal to my body in real time. And then the longer it takes for me to do it, the more other things come into play and the less likely it is to happen. And the more frustrated I get too. So the more dysregulated. So you can also use it to be like, what college should I go to? Or, like, should I disclose my autism at work? Things like that. We have safety checks built in. So like, if you ask it if you should commit crimes, which my co-founder, Norian, that was the very first question she asked was, should I commit crimes? It'll either return like an error message, or it'll say, I am a helpful and harmless LLM, and you should not commit crimes. Like that is always going to be a no. Mayhem ? Or should I start a revolution? Like these are some of the things that, I mean, we're all neurodivergent, so we basically built it and then tried to crack it as hard as we could. It'll tell you it's not qualified to answer those, or it'll just say error and be like, but it's not going to, like what we've tried to do is make it so that it will not answer something that it's not qualified to answer, something that could actually really cause harm or could impact your life in a negative way. It'll only guide you in reflecting and make a recommendation based on what you've told it. So hopefully it will teach people to make better decisions, even without the app, but also serve as a big support when you just don't have the cognitive capacity to do it in the moment.
Now, more and more people are concerned about their data privacy and safety, and as a result, sometimes won't use apps because of this. So how does Decide address these concerns about data privacy and safety?
A couple of things. We chose an LLM that doesn't train on your data. We use the Gemini. There's like numbers and stuff, but it's on our website. You can look. It doesn't train the LLM on the questions you're asking and stuff like that. And then within our system, your login information is in one database, and then all of the LLM calls are in a completely separate thing. So like hacking one doesn't give you the information on the other. The main thing is that we make sure you know that your data belongs to you. We're not going to sell it. In our terms of use, and I can't remember the exact, like what the language ended up being, because we had to make it so that we could still like use it enough to run the applications. our goal has been from the beginning to make it so that people can, as we grow and we get more apps, because Side's just the first, right? We want to have more apps that do similar kinds of just like single tasks, support for executive dysfunction and sensory overload and just the stuff that we need help with. We want to connect them on the back end so that you can link your data. And then when you customize one, it kind of populates the others. That's all in-house. And it would still be separate from your login information, right? So it would be DA identified. But then what we want to do, and this is our kind of bigger, bold mission, and it is absolutely possible that I have played too much D&D in my life. I did grow up reading fantasy books and like all these world-changing things. So I'm like, yes, let's take over the world. Let's change it. We want to flip the power dynamic in autism research and funding. So if we have basically the largest pool of data on the autistic lifespan ever, and it's all owned by individual autistic people, like they own their data, then if researchers want to access that data, they have to earn our trust. They have to get past our company, and then they have to get the users to say, yeah, this is worth the inconvenience of answering a survey or something like that. And the way we got funded is, and this is kind of proof of concept, we were able to build this because we got a grant from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities to study that medical and behavioral health question. And so if you're using the app during open beta, which it is right now, then you fill out 2 surveys, like one at the beginning and then one in 2 weeks after you started using it. And then we can go back to them and we can say like, yes, we already did all this research on like the well-being stuff. This is the, like, whether the app is helping or not. But the idea is we would be able to do that with other folks. Like all of these, what was it, like the Spectrum 10K and all of these things that like big projects that want to collect all this data on autistic people, but they want to collect it separate from our oversight. So we want to just, and also like, there's nothing particularly useful to us in the way that they go about collecting it. It's just like more work. So we wanted to create a tool that was useful to people in and of itself, and then a way to, as you so choose, opt into research that you think will benefit you and people like you. Basically just that leadership of lived experience.
It makes a lot of sense because, in a different way, autism stories, where I just interview autistic people, and over the years started to get like companies and PR firms that maybe a non-autistic person has created research or has written a book or has created a course, and they want to come on Autism Stories to promote it. And the first question I always ask is, was there an autistic person involved in creation of that thing? Because I would at least want one of those people to talk about it. And then many times I don't get a response after that. I think it's kind of the same idea of, lived experience. And we're not going to, on this platform or what you're doing, not going to disseminate things that we feel like maybe are not in the best intentions of the autistic community.
Yeah. There was a book recently that came out, Selling Out the Spectrum, by Liam O'Dell, and I highly recommend it. He's a deaf autistic journalist. I think it's he, him. Apologize if it's not. Who basically like was how researchers lost the trust of autistic people and like how they would get it back. And I've been reading that, and it's so like all the things that we were thinking when we created this company, that is very usefully documented. I saw an article the other day. It was like an op-ed that was arguing that nothing about us without us was exclusive, like to non-speaking autistic people or other disabled people who can't communicate in spoken language. And so families and caregivers needed to be included in that. And it was such a, you clearly do not get this at all. Like, you don't know where the balance of power is right now, because nothing about us is exactly the opposite. It shouldn't just be families and that's who it is. Families and caregivers. It needs to be us, even if it's really hard to communicate with us. That needs to be the first step, is that work, which actually we applied for a grant. I don't know if we'll get it or not, but we're going to keep applying to co-design a user research project or process with spellers and AAC users, so that we could create a version of Decide for like an AAC device that would be on the same device. It's in our product roadmap. Like, we don't want to get too far down the line without making sure that all of our community has access to this. And that we're designing future things so that they will be useful to all of us. So our research question there is basically, do supports designed for autistic adults with lower visible support needs hold relevance for autistic adults with higher visible support needs? Require adaptation, but hold more relevance than those designed by completely elastic people. Because we've seen a lot of people arguing about that, but nobody's ever just like sat down and tried to like and ask the question. And so we want to do that with Decide and see if we think it does. but we're going to ask, and we're going to actually look at the evidence, and we're going to make a really detailed log of everything that we're doing, so that even we can do it better next time.
Lately, I've been pretty dysregulated, and I bring this up because Decide can be used for burnout-free decisions. So I'm wondering how Decide might be able to help in those situations. And I'll be very specific in that when I'm dysregulated, the idea of eating anything sometimes sounds gross. But I still, as a human, have to eat. So how could your app help in a situation like this?
When my dad died, I couldn't eat. Like, I lost all appetite, and but I would then try and like go do things, and I was already in like massive immediate burnout, so I should not have tried to do anything on my own, which I realized pretty quickly. But like, my blood sugar would crash because I wouldn't eat anything. And then wherever I was, I wouldn't know where I was. I'd be like, I'm lost in IKEA, and I have to call for help. Like, tell me how to get out of the store. It's bright, and there's furniture everywhere and people, and I'm hungry, but food is disgusting. Yeah, so that resonates with me. I would in those situations, I would use random from list. I would create a list of things that, and you can also, with the AI suggestions for the list, you can like put in, I want a list of foods that have, and then you could just describe like ready-made, like any textural things. Like, for me, it's like, just give me a protein bar, because it's all going to be disgusting. So give me the next, like, the thing that's going to fill my belly the fastest. But like, you could talk to somebody and figure out what some of those things are, put your criteria in, have AI generate a list, or put your own things in. And then when you need to eat something, you could just random from list.
And when and where will Decide be released, so any neurodivergent person that wants to use it will have access?
So it's currently available in open beta for anyone in the US, which means that you can get it on Google Play, or you can get it off of Test Flight for Apple. And there's one extra step, because you got to download Test Flight first. But it's really very simple. And that is basically, like, right now, you try it because you're trying to shape it into what you also want it to be, and give us lots of feedback. We had, in like the first 24 hours, we found like there were just a couple of bugs, but they were bugs that we couldn't have known until it went out there, and they've been fixed. But the number of people who persevered and then sent us like, okay, these were the bugs, this is exactly what happened, but I love the app. That has been really, really great. And then it'll be available on the App Store, like officially within a couple weeks, probably before the end of January. So I don't know when this will air. And if you do it in open beta, you are agreeing to participate in our research. And there's 2 surveys you have to fill out. And if you don't want to do that, you can just wait until it's in the App Store. And in the App Store, or the public release, it's a freemium pricing model. We wanted to make as much as we could free. You get unlimited random from list. And I think it's like 10 guided decisions. It's basically like 10 LLM calls. So, because that's what we have to pay for. That's free. And then if you want, you can do the premium, which is everything that's in the beta. So like the AI suggestions and the and unlimited guided decisions and get instructions and things like that. Those are buying that. But the price is $4.99 a month. And there's a annual fee if you want, that's like 20% off of that. And then I think we're going to do a short-term like lifetime fee. So if you want to be an early adopter and just like pay a set amount and then you have the unlimited app wherever it goes, like that's also going to be an option. So we're trying to, and then the goal is as we grow we call it the armory, like this multiple connected apps and things, as we grow this, our goal is anytime we hit certain revenue benchmarks, we can make more features free. So almost crowdfunding, but not like in a different way.
I did want to ask, because looking at your LinkedIn profile, you mentioned at the top of your profile, you mentioned creating neurodivergent tech by us, for us, through your organization, the Autistic Self-Reliance Network. When you think about neurodivergent tech, what have you learned in terms of tech that's out there that is helpful to our community?
Goblin Tools is really, I don't know if you're familiar with that. There are these really simple little AI things that were little AI web-based small programs that are free to anybody. And they're things like break down a task list or they're just very simple little things, but they're really great for people like us. People that did them are in Europe somewhere, and they've basically been like, we're not going to do anything else with this. We aren't going to monetize it. We just want to make this available for free. Go to town. Those have been really cool. I use the LLM interfaces, I'd rather use, if I'm not going to use any of the pure LLM straightforward interfaces to make for like decision help, because when I need decision help, I'm too overwhelmed to come up with lots of prompts, like the right prompts and make it go through all the iterations that would make it useful. Like that's why we built an app for it. But when I'm not overwhelmed, when I'm trying to do something, think through something, then sometimes I use Claude and we'll go back and forth on like, okay, so this is what I need to do. And then I try and use, like when I'm using AI, I try and use it for what I think it's best at, which is taking something and rewriting it in a different format. So like, hey, write my advertisement for my 20-second ad for this, whatever product. Analysis, like here's my grant proposal. Can you look it over and find any inconsistencies and tell me like if there are gaps, like where I should add more. Summarizing, like here is this long article and I can't, like I've started it 5 times and I can't make my brain process it. Like paste, summarize, give me the Cliff Notes version, like in bullet points in plain language. So that can be, those are some of the things I've found really helpful. The reality is that there's just not that much out there that most of it is designed based on looking at autistic people from the outside. And it's designed for caregivers and support professionals. It's not really designed for us. That was part of why autism focused accelerator, that at first we were like, oh yeah, they're trying to make autism focused track. That's great. And we went to one of their like ask me anythings, and like one of the things we're asking, everybody's telling everyone else or pitching their ideas. And we're like, okay, how many autistic founders do you have? And they were like, we are absolutely delighted to support autistic founders. And I was like, okay, what accommodations do you offer? Because we did another accelerator, and it was like, thankfully, I have a whole team of autistic and ADHD people, and we could tag each other out because it was brutal. They wanted us, like when we did Zooms, your video always had to be on, and you had to be not fidgeting, because if you were fidgeting, then that meant you weren't being respectful. And so like 3 of us would log in and then tag team it. Like one of us would be camera off and just like doing what we needed to do, and like you would switch it. Like somebody would keep their camera on, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have to be the same one. They were 2 or 3 hours long at the end of the day. Like, I mean, it's just simple stuff, but nobody wants to. There's like disability tech is something like a multi-trillion-dollar market. And disabled founders are 400 times less likely to receive venture funding than non-disabled founders for disability tech. I wish there was more out there I could recommend. I've met some really amazing people who are like piloting stuff that I desperately want to be out there in the world, and we are trying to support them as much as possible. Sidewalk Sidekick is a project that a friend of ours is working on, and it's a mobile app to crowdsource gaps in the sidewalk network and get real-time accessible routes, like redirection, or how to get from one place to another. It's like only like 30% of autistic people drive. Like most of us are walking, and then also wheelchair users. And I don't know about you, but it's the same thing I have when I drive, but if I get to the building and then I can't, like there's construction on the road, like that's massively dysregulating. If I can figure out how to get there anyway, by the time I get there, I'm completely useless. So that's a piece of technology I desperately want to exist in the world.
Well, Shannan, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Thanks so much to Shannan for the conversation. To learn more about Shannan and the Decide app, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you, and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode regarding in what ways do you think AI can be used to best serve the autistic community? Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to be the best version of their authentic selves through our customized life coaching and community groups. We also support parents and partners of autistic folks by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. So please visit autismpersonalcoach.com to begin your experience of judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.